Hey, hello, I'm Ren Ribeiro, and I want to connect with you about peace and justice. We are interviewing women who labor for peace, as we have forever and always will, until we all feel peace in our homes, our workplaces, our communities, and especially our bodies and minds. This initiative is named Mujéres Co-Labor for Peace. It's a show of intimate conversations with justice workers who are healing their self and communities from the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. Welcome to the show. I am Ren Ribeiro, and I wish you complete wellness and lasting peace. Today's episode features the kind of intimate conversation that I wish for every human being everywhere. One that is considerate, heart-centered, and both inspired and inspiring. Susan Raffo, a body worker and community builder from Minnesota, the co-founder of Healing Histories Project and Relationships Evolving Possibilities, and the author of a few books including Queerly Classed, Gay Men and Lesbians on Class, Liberated to the Bone, part of Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy series, and At the Fork in the Road. She is currently walking over 4,000 miles from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast. Please check in with your heart and breathe with us as we check in with ours in this sweet conversation.
Hey, Ren.
How are you?
I'm good, friend. How are you? I can't believe we just, was it a week and a half ago?
I know, I missed you.
It feels so long ago, friend. Oh my God, it
I know.
feels so long ago.
It does. My
Oh,
gosh. How many miles have you logged? I mean, I know you had your daughter's graduation, you had all that.
yeah,
Amazing. Good
yeah,
stuff.
not that much since then because I did maybe what, 4 days after we walked, and then I'm starting again on the 22nd. But I was in New York for a week, and then I just got back yesterday. And I'm staying with a friend in Greenpoint to sort of decompress from New York before I start walking again on the 22nd.
Nice. Nice.
Hey,
Yeah.
you!
Ah!
I I can't believe that you had 9 pets.
9 ticks. Oh my God, I have a whole story to tell you. And I made this continuum. Like I can't wait to tell you about this in the way that I tried to take the 9 ticks and turn it into like lemonade, like really make something of that horrible
Yes.
experience. So I'll get to that. Um, but before we get into that, I'd like you to share a word or a phrase or a gesture about how your heart is today or in this
Oh,
moment.
that's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
And then introduce
My
you to
heart,
your words, like,
my heart. My heart feels like it's a little bit quiet, and it's open, not closed, and it's soft, but slow and not like pulsating out a lot of energy, but not closed.
ah, I love that. I love that. I love that.
How is your heart?
Oh, mine is definitely pulsing. It's definitely pulsing. It's very present in the moment. Yeah. I'm like, there's so much that we shared in 9 miles, I can't believe it. So, and your work is just so beautiful and the healing journey that you've been on for probably your entire existence is it's really like um an inspiration for all of us. And for me, very specifically, like the threads that we wove in conversations. I'm going to jump right into this visualization. It's this continuum. I'd love to share this with you. So because
Wonderful.
in this 9 miles, we had this, like, and the 9 ticks that sought me out. It inspired me to design this framework, or like a continuum that's both linear but also spherical in multiple directions, like life. And so um, there's all this multifaceted energy in this visual that I got. But it basically is like, we talked about things like indigeneity and kinship, living intentionally, on like one end of the continuum, and then on the other end it was like this global things, heads of state, religion, and then interpersonal communications, which I put right in the center of the continuum, like intimate family relationships and just intimacy in general, communication. So I put that in the middle, and then all these 9 points to honor our conversations and the 9 damn ticks. One of them was like literally in my ear that my daughter took off the next day. How did I not know it was there? Oh, anyway, I'm getting off track. Wow, that word just didn't want to come out. So imagine that, so all of these points, imagine all of us mapped on each point in all of our different dimensions and experiences of that topic, of that, our experience of those topics in a spherical mapping. Like, it's really dense because there's some short lines and some long lines, and just like really dense and gnarly and beautiful and full and vibrant. And so all of these 9 spheres kind of bring the whole continuum in toward itself as a big sphere. That's what I got. It was like the light and the
Oh
grace
my God.
of walking through the Bacumtic homelands with you in Western Mass last week.
Two things. The first, what gorgeous quantum multidimensional dreaming that you just did. What beautiful sense of having ancestors, time, and possibility sort of layered up in the way you just drew it. So that's just stunning. And embedded in this, I have so much curiosity about the number 9. Um, but then the second part is I love that you use the word gnarly.
Yeah, like I
But
love
I
that
have
word
so much
too. Like,
curiosity about the number 9.
so gnarly, and with the G.
Oh, it's awesome. It made me really, really happy.
Oh,
But I am curious about the number 9. I'm like, why is 9 nudging at you like that? I don't know a lot about what 9,
it's the number of wisdom.
the lineage of the number.
Yeah, there is,
Hmm.
it's like, if you put 6 and 9 together, it's female with the external, body parts. And the feminine and the wisdom. It's, thanks for presencing that, like, that it's nudging me. I love that. Thank you.
And I love that when we are 9, that is around the age that all of us as children are, when there's a particular shift from our family as our whole world to the whole world starting to open up. Like, there's a developmental stage that happens around that age where our sense of ourselves is connected to something larger than what happens within our home, takes a really big leap, which is one of the reasons why girls at around that age start to sort of diminish a little bit, because we're encountering the truth of what it is to be a girl, a woman, all sorts of things. But it
Uh-huh.
is a really sacred age for that, around our sense of connection to that which is not immediately intimate with us in our home.
Wow. Well, that just took me some places. Wow. Yeah, and you write about this, as a writer, as someone who's like gifting the world with so much beauty in your words, that you had some childhood trauma, and
Mhm.
I don't know if I shared the childhood trauma that I had about my brother. Um, well, he was, his life was shortened very traumatically by an 18-wheeler that my dad was driving on New Year's Eve.
Oh,
And I
sweet
watched
love.
it. Yeah, I watched it. It was really hard.
Oh,
Um,
sweet love.
and I was 8. So 9 was like when all of this, when you talk about like the light diminishing and the separation and the, kind of, I call it my years of spiritual comatose, being spiritually comatose. It was quite
Mm,
a time. But those 9-year cycles feel really, really great. Am I entering it?
mm.
No, not for a bit. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a nice level layer of awareness. You know,
Mm.
we never stop learning through our life experiences, huh?
And I am sorry to hear that your child self had to learn to tolerate the intolerable
Mm,
at such a young age. So
thank
many moments like that, and it sucks.
you. Yeah, yeah. Thank
Mhm,
you. Thank you.
mhm.
Well, I have some questions for you, and I'd love to actually first hear how you would like to describe yourself, given all the things that you do and bring and share in the world.
Oh my God, that's always at this point in my life the hardest thing. So rather than giving you lots and lots of paragraphs that meander through ancestors and lineage, which would take some time,
Mm,
and happily I put that out in multiple places and that roots me, or about the ways in which I've had practices that have shaped how I take action in the world. For right now, I'll just say, and I suppose the two identities that I want to lift up that feel the strongest right now is mother and walker. I mean, mother, I was just honoring my daughter's graduating from college last week. And as a break between my first 360 miles and the next 4,000 miles of walking. And I will say that I walk with ancestors deeply, ancestors of this land and ancestors who crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come here. Uh, and I walk listening in both the most deeply political and spiritual way what it means for us to live on this land in a good way together. Um, when so many of our shared kin, those who crossed the Atlantic, white Euro-Christian folks, have been pretty much fucking that up all along. So that's that's what is. And again, the root is also spiritual within all of that. So
mm,
that's what I would say right now. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, mother and walker. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I have been really moved by your craniosacral therapy healing journey and how you like gathered so many healers to create a camp at Standing Rock in 2016. I'm wondering, excuse me, if you would speak to kind of the art of craniosacral therapy and how it's informed your life, your social justice advocacy, and maybe also your health, if that's something that you want to throw in there too.
Absolutely. And one brief correction, I did not organize a camp of healers at Standing Rock. I came and participated and supported as one of many, many people,
Mm,
multiple healers who were there, and did a lot of different kinds of work at Standing Rock, but I would really move my leadership and agency to the back and say that I came in support, in listening and in learning, and not in a kind of front end leading way.
thank you.
And I'm grateful to have been there and grateful for what I learned. Yeah. And creative psychotherapy, I mean, you know, I want to think about how I want to answer that. One quick class. I was always compelled to touch people in the way of to offer care, reassurance, support. And when I was in my early 20s, I started studying shiatsu and massage, but I was not in a place where I knew how to keep myself intact. And so when I touched somebody to offer care, support, and reassurance, I would end up merging, giving a lot of myself away. And I started to get quite sick to the point where I couldn't actually touch people without getting dizzy and having that way, which was clear that I need to do a hell of a lot of work on my own healing first. And I think it's deeply important because I think a lot of people come into healing practices because we are so hungry for our own healing and so much honor for that. But to become a practitioner, we really need to have done enough that we have the capacity to keep ourselves intact, to keep that beautiful balance between blending the boundaries between us and who we're working with, while also keeping a clear separation between ourselves and the other, a both and, not as a binary. And when I first started, I could not do that at all. And then when I was in my early 40s, well, in my 30s, I started getting this nudge again to sort of start learning again. But I was deeply in political work, organizing work, and at a time where the only people I knew who had healing practices were either deeply rooted in cultural spaces, so Native folks in Native spaces, Black folks in Black spaces where they were doing cultural work, and it wasn't called like healing whatever, but it was a part of just being alive together. But folks who were not in culturally integrated, culturally intact space, when I knew practitioners, they were sort of off doing their practice over here. And then if they were involved in movement work, they would kind of then leave the practice to come to movement work. I didn't know any integration. And I was in my early 40s. I was a parent. I sort of felt like, oh, if I start studying body work, it's such a cliche. Here I am, I'm getting older, campaign, movement work is so hard. I'm now going to help people feel good about themselves. Like I had so many stories in my mind, but I still kept being deeply drawn to it. And what helped me start to start to feel my way there is there was that whole truth, that one part. But another part was noticing how often when I was doing collective work, I would be, with a group of people and we had been building relationship for quite a while. We were like clear about our strategy. We were clear about our analysis. We were clear about our love for each other. And then something would happen in the space. And sometimes what happened was, an act of oppression. Somebody would say something racist or sexist or whatever. Or sometimes there'd be ex-lovers in the room and they would like start turning on each other and people would start picking sides. Like any number of things would happen. And then this collective clarity would begin to erode. And all of the things that now we talk so effortlessly about, but in the early 2000s we did not, would happen. So the room would either tighten up and then would move on as though nothing had happened, or people would start picking sides, and there'd be fight energy in the room, or a bunch of folks would just get up and leave. And I wanted to know what was happening in that space. I didn't have any language. And again, in the early 2000s, outside of people who were doing deep therapeutic work or were in that world, we didn't have this sort of general shared awareness that has really grown about survival strategies and survival responses. And I certainly didn't have it, and didn't know anybody who did. And so I just wanted to know what was happening inside our bodies as well as what was happening, between us and around us. So I felt pretty strong on the between us and around us, but not on the within us. And so that was kind of a nudge that helped that part that was like, what are you doing body work for? You're leaving the front lines. That's not real work. Like all of that bullshit in my brain to start to look for something to learn. And interestingly, the way I came to creating psychotherapy was through my daughter. When she had been born, she was completely, marked well on all of the APGAR tests, all of the Western ways of measuring the health of a child when they're born, an infant. But I kept having this feeling that I don't want to say something wasn't right because it's not quite like that, but like this there's something here that I don't understand that feels off or not. I don't know what the words are, but that feeling. Excuse me. And so I was asking around, talking with different friends, and a friend of mine who is a nurse who's super pragmatic. She is not somebody who chases, looks for different kinds of alternatives. She is really groovy with Western medicine. She's a nurse in a particular way, and she said to me, she's like, when she was pregnant, her daughter was breech, and so she went to this person to get some help with turning her daughter to try to be able to do a vaginal birth. And And so my friend was like, you should go talk to this woman. She's this thing called a craniosacral therapist. You should go talk to her. So I was at that point in my life, Ren, I was like very suspicious. I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk, but I'm not gonna tell her all the shit. I don't know what this woo crap is, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna like not describe all of the things and just see what happens. And so I brought my daughter there and we're sitting and I was telling the craniosacral therapist, whose name is Angel, just a little bit. And then, see, my daughter at that age, one of the things was that she would not relax when people held her. She
Mm-hmm.
relaxed when I held her as her birth parent and my partner. She relaxed when my partner's mother held her. But for everybody else, most infants, unless there's a reason to be in this way, most infants, newborns, will really melt into the hands of the person holding them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my daughter didn't do that, except with the three of us. And that was one of the things that was there. So I didn't say that much, but I handed my daughter over to Angel, and Angel and my daughter just melted into Angel's hand. And then Angel just held her and said, oh, did you have a fast labor? And I was like, yeah, 4 hours. And she was like, yeah. She's like, she hasn't finished coming through yet. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. And so she held her. And what I now know as a craniosacral therapist is supported Luca to complete her birth. And I saw Luca's body doing this movement and unwinding and a lot of shift. And Ren, I felt a presence come into the room. It was as as tactile, as clear as if you'd opened the window and a breeze had come through, a cool breeze. It was that tactile. I felt it. I started crying. It felt like love.
Ooh.
And my child, and my child, something that before I had felt was different on the other side. And I just sat as I felt this coming. What I heard inside very clearly was, "Oh, this is what I will study." Um, and so that's what brought me to craniosacral therapy. And the first, I studied at three different schools. The first school I went to,
Can
I
I?
put my hands on somebody and I was seeing, please.
I'm wondering, yeah, because I want to share a little bit about why I asked you this question, and I'm so grateful
Yes.
for your experience because I brought my son to a craniosacral therapist. That was how I learned about it because I had a doctor tell me, "Oh, we can fix that about my son." Very Western medicine, and I was like, "Fix what?" Like, so I'm like, oh, so I spent quite a number of years battling, Western medicine, and I went to a craniosacral therapist, and he was too nervous to go. So I got up on the table myself to say, "Hey, it's safe," and her name was Pat. Like, I was like amazed that you remembered her name, but I remembered the name of the therapist as well. It's so funny. And I get up there, and she puts her hands on my head, and it was something else like I had never experienced before. He did not still, he still was like resistant, and he resisted a lot of things. He's still a little bit of oppositional, but he's a fully functioning adult now. And I'm grateful for all the different modalities we tried, but the moment that I felt that kind of touch was so different. So I'm really inspired by Angel's touch and what that did for your family.
My daughter saw Angel for quite a while, and I've often said to her, "You've got a fuck of a lot." She knows this. We talk about this all the time. You got a lot of privileges in your life, and receiving, a form of body work for really your first 14, 15 years of life is one of the many privileges you have.
Mhm.
And I don't want to go much further in time about craniosacral therapy without just pausing and to remember alongside you that craniosacral therapy is a lineage that is largely taught to students as sort of starting with the founder of osteopathy, Andrew Taylor Stills. And so, like many bodywork modalities, it's really taught with a litany of white male faces as being the founders of it. And what is very clear is that they have shaped. I don't want to take away my gratitude for what they've shaped, but I also really want to hold that the story never completely disappeared. I mean, my first really good basic therapy teacher it's not woven through the tradition is that Andrew Taylor Still, who's the founder of osteopathy, out of which craniosacral therapy, polarity therapy, chiropractic all emerges from.
Mm.
But Andrew Taylor Still learned much of what is called craniosacral therapy in his relationship with local Shawnee people, as well as Cherokee people, who had hands-on practices that, while all of our people have hands-on traditions in our lineage, Andrew Taylor Still's people, who were, I believe, Scottish and English, not very many remember that. It had largely been lost. And so for him, it was revolutionary to do what is really just being with presence. I mean, craniosacral therapy, as you know, it runs from a very mechanistic approach to healing to almost a completely energetic approach to healing with everything in the middle. And he learned, he was in relationship with Shawnee and Cherokee traditional healers, and so he was learning from them. That was something that he continued talking about. He even talked about touching like an Indian, etc. But as the profession became a profession, it, like all white-led appropriating professions, completely let go of that piece in order to choose the language of discovery. Also part of the tradition, which it's important to name, is that Andrew Taylor Still, and this I'm going to say very gently to folks, like, this is real people we're talking about. This is never just information. And so may your heart and mind be open with what I'm saying. Is that as he was building the profession and learning, he was also exhuming ancestors' remains from a Shawnee graveyard. So without consent, there's fighting in craniosacral therapy as to whether or not he had consent. Exhuming ancestors' bones, ancestors' remains who had died of smallpox, brought over from Andrew Taylor Still's kin, means that there is accountability embedded in this, that there is a lineage of horror combined with the lineage of healing around its origins. And so, it matters, I think, that all of us who are practitioners are building right relationship to the lineage of our practice, listening and recognizing for what has been disappeared, as well as, if it's not been disappeared, for what our relationship is to the descendants of those who created the lineage and the practices that we benefit from, is part of our work, right? To not include that as my work as a craniosacral therapist means that I'm both perpetuating a wound while also practicing healing. And so before I say anything else about craniosacral therapy, I really wanted to name that with gratitude to Dr. Louis Mel-Madrona, Hugh Milne, and others who told the stories that helped me to then also look.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I saw a reference on your Instagram about craniosacral therapy with its roots in the Shawnee tradition and Cherokee. But I didn't make that connection and I didn't read about it. So I'm appreciating that context and that the grace with which you share the context. It's something that I definitely took away from our walk about your practice of living as a healed person, and not paying forward any harms, or as few as possible. Yeah. I don't want to breathe
That's
on.
a very kind thing to say. May it be so, because what an amazing thing it would be to not be bringing harms forward. And it is an absolutely gorgeous aspirational practice to have for all of us.
Yay! Thank you for participating in part 1 of episode 19 with Susan Raffo, who is walking from the Atlantic to the Pacific, over 4,000 miles with a backpack. In this first part, we heard how inspired conversation brings grace to life's challenges. Specifically for me, how the conversation with Susan that we had during the 9 miles that I walked with her, we took an old colonial road that nature had taken back, and I got 9 ticks. If I hadn't had such a phenomenal conversation with Susan, I would have been a lot less graceful about those ticks. We also listened to the experience of bodywork for children, some of the appropriated history of craniosacral therapy, and ways to hold one another with an active heart intention. Join us again for the second part as we dive into language and how it connects and disconnects, Susan's experience co-laboring on the Healing Histories Project, and their beyond impressive 500-plus year timeline of the medical industrial complex through stories of care and control. I am Ren Ribeiro, and I thank you so very much for joining. This initiative is supported by Inner Fortune, the full-life self-coaching journal that is now digital. Join us for peace, and thank you for your heart.